Welcome everyone to Buddhist Center. My name is Jeff Allen and it's Sunday. So we're talking about Lam Rim, something that we've been doing on Sundays for many years, decades. And what a fortunate group of people we are to know what the word Lam Rim means, stages of the path, and to have a little bit of an inkling of an idea of what those stages are, because it's those stages that we will need in order to change our minds from a mind that has all these adventitious defilements, the proliferating Buddha nature potential that we have, change it from wherever we are in relation to that right now into the pure mind of a Buddha. Because our mind is empty, just like the Buddha's mind is empty and doesn't have any nature of adventitious defilements. They are there, but they can be removed, just like the Buddha removed his, and her Buddhas removed theirs. So before I get started, I just wanted to share something and kind of dedicate this practice to someone who's become quite special to me, who's part of the Nalanda Master's course, and he's kind of become like my little spiritual brother. Reminds me a lot of me when I first got into Buddhism, very excited about the Lam Rim, and quite a bright young man. And he texted me very early this morning, and his wife got back from the hospital, and she was diagnosed, the first diagnosis. So of course we know you go to specialists, then you find out more, with popcorn lung, and they've given her a year to live. She's only 29 years old. Her name is Liz Landerverde. They have a beautiful young boy, 3 or 4, I'm not exactly years old. His name is Justin. And we've become quite close. I mean, we talk a couple times a day back and forth on WhatsApp about Dharma and, just about Dharma life. And he texted me this morning, and I was just so sad, and Lori and I were so sad to hear this awful news with such a young boy, and such good parents seemingly, and really full of love in that household, and concern and care, and mindfulness. And to hear that this morning, it was really impactful. And I know so many sentient beings are suffering. And you've all mentioned people to me that are having really hard times right now, but somebody so young, with such a young child, let's keep both Justin and Liz in your prayers, and we'll do what we can from our side to create powerful causes and conditions for, maybe it not being the exact diagnosis, or maybe, there being some kind of intervention that can take place. So before I got started, I just wanted to mention that, and just please keep them in your prayers, as we do all sentient beings. Whenever people would ask Rinpoche to pray for them, he'd always, say, of course, and I pray for all sentient beings. So it's important that we do that. And, I don't want to, take too much time, but just remember, we all know people who are suffering greatly. And here's just another example of, news that can just happen like this. And we can have any news just happen like that. And just make sure that we're doing what we need to do on a moment-to-moment basis to influence our minds with the Dharma, so that, if that kind of news comes, and if we suddenly find ourselves in that situation, that we'll be able to have a foundation to practice from, and we'll be prepared for it. So that's all I wanted to say about that. I don't want to get emotional right now, but it's quite sad. So let's get into a position which we could really start to generate a good motivation from, really clear our minds from. This practice that we do each time before we get started is really kind of connected to the 6 preparations. Of course, the 6 preparations of setting up an altar and cleaning the room, assembling images of enlightenment, 1. Number 2, obtaining offerings honestly in a good way, and arranging them beautifully before those, and then getting into a posture and clearing our minds and setting a good motivation. And then we find refuge and bodhicitta in there. We do it connected sometimes you'll see, though, that done after you've imagined the merit field. And that's kind of how we do it. We integrate kind of the two of that third step of getting our minds clear into a good place from which we could practice, and then imagining the merit field. And the reason that I have chosen to do it the way that we do it is so that all sentient beings are here with the merit field, and when we generate bodhicitta, and then you would make a 7-limb prayer, which we will do today, and then make further supplications with a mandala offering. Sometimes the mandala offerings in the 7-limb prayer, of course, during the offering part, no problem. No problem whatsoever. As long as we're incorporating all of these details, it's really about setting up a proper motivation. The great masters say there's 2 important things that we do in our practice. 1, setting up a proper motivation, and then finally dedicating it to becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. So it's important in the beginning to do the proper motivation and setting it up so that we really are in a space that is a spiritually kind of generated space, and then dedicating whatever it is that we do from that spiritually generated space to becoming a Buddha for everyone's sake, because we've been handed the doctrine of the Mahayana, the great vehicle doctrine that the entrance of starts with bodhicitta, the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and all the bodhisattvas dedicate everything that they do to becoming a Buddha for all beings' sake. And we try to emulate these beings. We try to, even if it's in a contrived way, generate our minds in the same way that they would, and think about the same things that they do, so that we create the causes and conditions for us to become bodhisattvas if you aren't already, for us to achieve renunciation if you don't have it already, for us to have the correct view of emptiness if you don't already have it. So before we get started, let's assume we've set the altar up and cleaned the room. I tried to fold some things in the room and make the room a little better. And we have images, we have offerings, we've obtained them honestly. One of Rinpoche's students, Coleman, gave us these beautiful flowers on Rinpoche's memorial night. So they're still here and beautiful. And the most important thing that we offer is our practice, as we know, as we talked about last time, that, the great master Milarepa, he lived in a cave and just had rags on. He didn't have, all kinds of material things to offer. He could obviously offer mental things, things unowned and owned and so forth. But the most important thing that Milarepa did was offer his practice. And that's what all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas really want from us, because their only aim is for us to have fearlessness and bliss. And the only way that we get fearlessness and bliss is by practicing. And by practicing, we're really making them the happiest. We're really making the largest offering that we have to offer, because we're offering back to them saying, yes, I'm heeding your advice. I'm doing what you've suggested. I'm fulfilling your wishes right now. You wish for me to have fearlessness and wish for me to have bliss, and I'm doing something about it. And your only reason for being in this world is for my sake, for everyone's sake. And that the only thing that I can do is practice, and the only thing that will really change my mind from a mind that has the defilements, that has attachment, hatred, and ignorance that comes from the self-grasping ignorance. The only thing I can do is start to work at getting rid of those things by incorporating liberating paths and ripening paths, by accumulations and purification and generating renunciation and bodhicitta, and then combining that with the liberating path of the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this is what we really can do. This is what the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas really want us to do. And when we do that, it's just like offering them everything they've ever wanted. So it's important that we remember that when we're making offerings, to offer our practice, and just really be happy about the fact that this is, rejoice in that fact that we're doing something about our condition. We're doing something about our 3, 6, and not our 8, 6, and 3 sufferings. And that's really what the Gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas want us to do. So let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture that we've gotten into many times before. This posture will allow us to have a good clarity of mind, allow for all of our winds and channels to kind of be where they should be, our blood to flow properly. And then this acts as a really good support for our mind as our mind becomes more and more advanced and can sit for longer periods of time without distraction within it. Our physical kind of posture doesn't become a distraction to our mind as we get more and more comfortable with this physical posture. So we get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, which is our legs in the preferably lotus position, half lotus, cross-legged, or just, feet on the ground, whatever you can physically do. Right hand on left with thumbs touching, back straight, vertebrae like a stack of coins, shoulders in a comfortable position, allowing for your arms to kind of bow out, head slightly tilted forward, eyes slightly open, pointed at the tip of our nose, and the mouth then in a comfortable position with our tongue on the roof of our mouth with it against our teeth. So they say, the legs, the back, the shoulders, the head, the eyes, and the mouth make for this posture. So our legs in the posture and our hands. I'm sorry, I said that's only 6. So our legs, our hands, our back, our shoulders, our head tilted, our eyes slightly opened, and our mouth in the comfortable position with it against our roof of our mouth, against our teeth. And then sometimes in Pabonka Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, you say, sometimes it says 8, and that's the breathing. So we'll begin sitting in that posture and breathing in and out through our nose, bringing the air all the way to the top of the breath, filling our lungs and our diaphragm, and turning it around and exhaling and counting 1, and adding the 4th focal object, 3 being breathing in, breathing out, and counting, and 4th focal object, Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of us, about arm length away, about eye height, about the size of our thumb, beautiful and radiant, but very in a static position. Because when we're doing single pointed focused meditation, we're trying to keep everything very static. In that case. So these will be our focal objects, and we're kind of spying on our mind to see if mindfulness is holding the object. Is mindfulness keeping the focal object? Mindfulness is not forgetting the object. So our focal object is breathing in and out and counting in that French generation form of Buddha Shakyamuni. So we're checking to make sure that our mind isn't scattering, our mind isn't excited in some way, running at attachment or running away from things we don't like. We're making sure that's not going on. And we're making sure also that our mind isn't so sleepy and dull that as we're breathing in and out, it's almost hypnotizing us. So we want to have our meditation be very, very focused, very clear, very stable. This is the aspect of the kind of single pointed focus meditation that we're trying to arrive at. We're trying to arrive at a place where we have that kind of sense of calmness that's very, very clear, stability and clarity. So let's start by doing that and get our minds into a clear spot. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. We're so fortunate to be able to have heard Buddha Shakyamuni's teaching. So many, many people have never even heard or imagined of hearing Buddha Shakyamuni's teachings. For whatever reason, we have these 8 leisures. We've created the karma in previous lives, and the conditions were just right for us to be thrown into a human basis that has these incredible, incredible conditions. We have all of the leisures. We have everything that we need. We had a holy, holy teacher who presented Buddha Shakyamuni's view to us, named Khenso Geshe Wandak, and His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all these other incredible beings that have presented Buddha Shakyamuni's view from an unbroken lineage. We have Buddha nature. We all will become Buddhas. Our mind can mature to the state of Buddhahood, just like Buddha Shakyamuni's mind matured to the state of Buddhahood. Our proliferating Buddha nature is empty of inherent existence, just like the Buddha's mind is empty of inherent existence. Because our mind is empty of inherent existence, it has the capacity to transform. If it was static, if it was permanent, if it was some sort of unitary thing that had no chance of changing, we couldn't transform into a Buddha. But because our mind is empty of inherent existence, it can be transformed. The adventitious stains can be removed through a path, the same path that Buddha Shakyamuni engaged in. Buddha Shakyamuni was so kind to us to present us with this path. Buddha Shakyamuni has perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, and perfect skillful means. And because of that, he shared this Dharma with us. This Dharma that has no faults. The Buddha presented us at the first turning of the wheel of Dharma with the Four Noble Truths and stated that this is the superior truth of suffering. This is the superior truth of origin. This is the superior truth of cessation. And this is the superior truth of path. We have to identify what suffering is and understand what the 8 sufferings are, 6 sufferings are, the 3 sufferings are. We have to abandon the origin of suffering and understand that the origin of suffering is a self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to inappropriate attention, that gives rise to the afflictions. And the afflictions give rise to contaminated karmas, and those contaminated karmas cause us to suffer again and again and again, cause that pervasive compounded suffering to force us into rebirth. We don't have any kind of independence in relation to that forcing. We didn't pick the exact circumstances that we have right now. Right before we were born, we were thrust into them by our karma, contaminated karma afflictions and their seeds. This happens again and again and again, and we don't have freedom in relation to it, and lack of freedom is misery, Buddha said. But luckily, Buddha stated that there is a cessation that we can achieve. And the Buddha said that the way we achieve that cessation is by relying on a path, by meditating on a path, the same exact path that Buddha did. We're all fully aware of what sufferings are. We know about suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death. We understand what it's like to be separated from pleasant things and meet with unpleasant things. We know what it's like to not get what we want, and the suffering of physical and mental suffering that we have to have because we've been appropriated these aggregates, because we have these aggregates that we were forced into, these contaminated body, speech, body and mind. But this can all end, luckily, because there's a path of wisdom that gets rid of the origin of suffering. We can achieve complete fearlessness the same way Buddha did, and get rid of the afflictive obstructions the same way Buddha did. And like myself, all sentient beings want to have happiness and the causes of happiness, want to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. They're all equally important. And the Buddha stated that by cherishing all sentient beings, we could not only remove the afflictive obstructions, but also the obstructions to omniscience. That even if we achieve an abiding nirvana by removing the afflictive obstructions, we won't have fulfilled all of our own needs, let alone all sentient beings' needs. And the way that we were fulfilling all of our needs and all sentient beings' needs is by becoming a Buddha, becoming the only reliable guide in the universe. Every single sentient being wants to have the state of freedom. No sentient being would say, I don't want fearlessness. I don't want bliss. And it's by relying upon other sentient beings and helping other sentient beings and putting their needs before our own, because we recognize that we definitely want to emerge from cyclic existence. We understood what the Buddha stated in the first turning of the wheel of Dharma and the Four Noble Truths. We understood those truths of suffering because they're empirical realities. They're realities that we all know are true. And when we look towards others, we recognize that that's the same reality is true for them. So because we want to achieve our aims and all sentient beings' aims, we must become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. At this point in time, we are handicapped in that sense. We aren't reliable guides. We don't even know exactly what it is that we need. We have to rely upon reliable guides that are Buddhas. And if we become Buddhas, we can become the reliable guides for all sentient beings. And we say, may I become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni is so happy that we've done this. We've said we want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. Now imagine that you bring all sentient beings here with you. Imagine that you bring all the hell beings, hungry ghosts and animals, all the humans, demigods and gods here with us to witness this incredible teaching that's been given to us by Khyentse Geshe Wandak, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and all the incredible beings. Now imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni in the space in front of you becomes animated, and all sentient beings see Buddha Shakyamuni animated and so happy. He's so happy that he sees everyone here. Everyone is here, ready to engage in practice. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni now explodes into the entire merit field. Imagine that Buddha Shakyamuni has been containing the entire merit field, and now all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas are in the space in front of you. Imagining still Buddha Shakyamuni there, so animated, so happy, so proud of the fact that we're engaging in the practices with all sentient beings without bias. Imagining that all of the gurus are now there, all the holy lamas, any lama that you consider holy, any being you consider holy. Imagining Khyentse Geshe Wandak smiling and so happy. We just did the memorial service for him. It's been 1 year since we've been able to be in his physical presence, but he's still here with us. Imagine him in the space in front of us, smiling and happy. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Geshe Lobsang Gompo, Demalocha Rinpoche, all these kind beings. Genjatsu, Khyentse Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdu, imagining again His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and imagining Umzala Geshe Aga, Geshe Mala Tenzin Ladrin, Jeffrey Hopkins, imagining Ani Tupten Chodron, Chado Rinpoche, all of these holy beings, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, all of them in the space in front of us, imagining the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga and Vasubandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Vimuktasena and Haribhadra and Gunaprabha and Shakyaprabha and Lama Salimpa, imagining all these holy beings who've taught us about grounds and paths, taught us about that incredible teaching of the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, taught us how to analyze text through logic and reasoning, taught us how to analyze the Abhisamalamkara, taught us how to analyze what ethics is according to the Vinaya. We're so fortunate to have this extensive deeds lineage in our life. And if we've read the Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we're so connected to these beings. Imagine all the beings from the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri and Nagarjuna and Buddha Palita and Arya Deva and Chandrakirti and Shanti Deva and Baba Vega and Kamala Shila and Chandrashita, all of these holy beings, imagining Lama Salimpa there who has both lineages of that Bodhi mind. Imagining Lama Atisha and Dron Tompa and the three Kadampa lineages, all those holy beings that passed us down so many great lessons. Imagine the beings in the lineage of blessings passed down from Vajradhara and Saraha and Matripa and Tilopa and Naropa and Marbalotsawa and Milarepa and Gampopa. Gampopa, who wrote that incredible Lamrim text, Jeweled Ornament for Liberation. The Kaju lineage. We're so fortunate we have these beings in our world. Imagining all of the beings of the Nyingma Kaju, Sakya, and Galup order, beings like Padmasambhava and Sakya Pandita, and the Karmapas, and Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtipje, Jelsipje, Goncho Jimmy Wampo, Jayan Sheba, the seventh Dalai Lama, Janja Rupi Dorje, all of these holy beings, Basu Chiji Jets, and all of these holy beings we're so connected to by studying the Lam Rim, by studying the mind training texts of Lojong. Imagining the highest yoga tantra deities, yogic tantra deities, performance tantra deities, action tantra deities, all of the 35 Buddhas with such immense power of purification. Just by reciting one of their names and making prostration, paying homage to them, we're able to get rid of eons of non-virtuous karma. Imagining all the protector deities who've said, I will protect your teachings, Buddha Shakyamuni. All the Buddhas, I will protect your teachings. I will protect those who follow your teachings. Imagining the small scope protector, Vaishravana, imagining the medium scope protector, Dharmapala, and the great scope protector, Mahakala, and also Palden Lama, and any of the other protector deities that are so holy and within this lineage. Rinpoche told us that Palden Lama would protect us. We rely on Palden Lama and many of these protectors. We're so fortunate and blessed to have them in our lives. All these beings are so happy. We have all sentient beings here. We've brought them here. We've said that I will take on my task of freeing myself, the task of freeing them all. But we know that we have very little capacity to do that. But we imagine that we have the utmost capacity, even if it's in a contrived way right now. And we've imagined that they're all here with us. Now, with this in mind, we'll recite some prayers, beginning with the prayer of noble conduct, the King of Aspiration prayers, which we'll do just the first part of. And just one note I'd like to make, anybody who's following it from the text that I'm reading from, which is the one that we've been using and printed out, there's just a slight change in where the actual offering begins. It just begins a little bit later than it's noted on that text. I noticed it this morning as I was reading it, and I said, that seems funny. And I checked where the offering part was broken out. So I checked in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, where the section on the 6 preparations is, and it was correct that it's just mismarked. And maybe in another tradition, it's marked in that way, or other commentaries, it's marked in that way. But when I say the breakdown as we go, if you're following the one that we used at Rinpoche's memorial, then I'll just ask you to just have a little patience with the fact that I will be changing where the offering is said. And just remember, imagine that all the sentient beings around you are reciting this prayer with you, that you're leading this prayer, and you're making this prayer of the 7 limbs to all the gurus, Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas in the space in front of you. So when we look at it in terms of the 6 preparations, this is the 5th preparation of making a 7-limb offering. The King of Aspiration prayers, Samantabhadra's aspiration to good actions. It's from the Ganda Vyuha chapter of the Avatamsaka Sutra, in the language of India, Arya Bhadracharya Pranadana Raja. In the language of Tibet, Papa Zampo Chupi Mulanji Jelpo. And then there's a translator's homage that says, homage to Manjushri the Youthful. Okay. The 7 preliminaries for purifying the mind, the 7-limb prayer, prostration. To all the Buddhas, the lions of the human race in all directions of the universe, through past and present and future. To every single one of you, I bow in homage. Devotion fills my body, speech, and mind. Through the power of this prayer, aspiring to good action, all the victorious ones appear vivid before my mind, and I multiply my body as many times as atoms in the universe, each one bowing in prostration to all the Buddhas, In every atom preside as many Buddhas as there are atoms, and around them are their bodhisattva heirs, and so I imagine them filling completely the entire space of reality, saluting them with an endless ocean of praise, with the sounds of an ocean of different melodies. I sing the Buddha's noble qualities and praise all of those who have gone to bliss. Now the offering. To every Buddha I make offerings of the loveliest flowers, beautiful garlands, music and perfumed ointments, the best of parasols, the brightest lamps and finest incense. To every Buddha I make offerings, exquisite garments in the most fragrant scents, powdered incense heaped as high as Mount Meru, arranged in perfect symmetry. Then the vast and unsurpassable offerings, inspired by my devotion to all the Buddhas, and moved by the power of my faith and good actions, I prostrate and offer to all you victorious ones. Confession. Whatever negative acts I have committed, while driven by desire, hatred, and ignorance with my body, my speech, and also with my mind, before you I confess and purify each and every one. Number 4, rejoicing. With a heart full of delight, I rejoice at all the merits of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, Prachika Buddhas, those in training, and the Arhats beyond training, and every living being throughout the entire universe, imploring the Buddhas to turn the wheel of Dharma. You who are like beacons of light shining through the worlds, who pass through the stages of enlightenment to attain Buddhahood, freedom from all attachment, I exhort you, all you protectors, turn the unsurpassable wheel of Dharma. Number 6, requesting the Buddhas not to enter nirvana. Joining my palms together, I pray to you who intend to pass into nirvana, remain for eons as many as the atoms in this world, and bring well-being and happiness to all living beings. Dedication. What little virtue I've gathered through my homage, through offering, confession, and rejoicing, through exhortation and prayer, all of it I dedicate to the enlightenment of all beings. Before we recite the Heart Sutra, I'd just like to share another prayer from the 7th Dalai Lama. This is called The Excellence of Meditation on the Bodhi Mind. Homage to Buddha, a supreme sage, a cosmic overlord who awakened living beings from drunken ignorance by manifesting the 100-fold light of truth's brilliant portal. Even should the earth be covered with a layer of lesser jewels, their radiance would be far surpassed by one fragment of a sparkling diamond. Similarly, does one with Bodhi mind outshine followers of lesser paths. Of this thing called Bodhi mind, source of all spiritual qualities, the supremely significant, the psyche of a high one, the force producing all Buddhas, I now sing this praise. The expanded mind, which thinks only of what benefits others, is a tree of endless fruit. One touch of its divine sap quells even the word suffering. Merely looking at hunger and deprivation turns one's stomach with horror. Bodhi mind is the only medicine able to cure all forms of need, just as a Naga king's jewel fulfills the wants of even hungry ghosts. Instinctive passion, which clouds the mind, instinctive stupidity blind to spiritual potential, the one sun to dispel them is Bodhi mind, torch of infinite rays. For destitute beggars at the door of the treasury of higher delights, Bodhi mind is the gatekeeper, and it fulfills all mundane needs as well. Only Bodhi mind, the aspiration to become a Buddha, totally purges the heaviest of karmas. Negativity that results in suffering, a fraction of which would break a man, it is a magic thing. To destroy misery now and forever, a fabled potion able to open the passage of a mother in labor. The sole thought on everyone's side, the precious mind aiming at enlightenment as a way to further the world, was seen by the Buddha to be the highest of spiritual means. For the sake of both yourself and others, plant the fertile seed of Bodhi mind, which quickly produces the state of Buddhahood, freedom from every limitation, make it firm as a mountain. The Buddha said, by cultivating the seeds of Bodhi mind, all spiritual qualities are born. Those who have developed it, he called kings of doctors. It can be read in both the sutras and shastras that the Bodhi mind is the door to the great way, and that the supreme practitioner who arouses it becomes a bodhisattva, a child of the Buddhas. Whether or not one is a bodhisattva is determined by whether or not one has bodhi mind. Those appointed with its sandalwood fragrance are adorned by the richest of good qualities. Even the eagle, king of birds, cannot fly if he is missing a wing. Many find the wing of perception of emptiness, but only those also with the wing of bodhi mind fly to the omniscient state of Buddhahood. Were the advantages of bodhi mind to take form, the universe could not contain them. Generating it but for a moment produces more goodness than offering a world filled with the 7 jewels to the Buddhas of the 10 directions. This is but a drop from the ocean of the beneficial effects of the bodhi mind, all of which even a Buddha could not describe. Therefore, wrap closely around your shoulders the cloak of admiration and joy for this one path all Buddhas have trod, and become living legends, having attained the states of inner freedom and knowledge by virtue of this song on the magic potion which transforms iron-like beings into beautiful golden Buddhas. May all living beings expand their vision and embrace the universal love of the Bodhi mind. And now we'll read the Heart Sutra, and we know that implicitly within this sutra, even though the Heart Sutra explicitly is talking about the wisdom realizing emptiness, of course, the Madhyamika Prasangika view, the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, is where the Buddha expounded the definitive truth, not an interpretable teaching, something that is the definite, ultimate, final nature of reality, that middle way consequence view that things have no objective existence. They have no inherent existence, no intrinsic existence. They have a conventional, subjective existence, but ultimately no true existence, no inherent existence. But implicitly, the Buddha taught within this same sutra the 5 paths. The path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. Tiat om gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhisoha. And we know that the entrance in terms of Mahayana to the 5 paths is bodhicitta, that incredible mind that we just read about, the only entrance into the Mahayana, the only mind that when coupled with the liberating path of the wisdom realizing emptiness that the Heart Sutra explicitly talks about, that will lead to complete Buddhahood, that will allow one to not only get rid of the afflictive obstructions that a hero or a solitary realizer is able to get rid of just through a liberating path coupled with renunciation, but also the obstructions to omniscience that the Buddha has achieved, that omniscient state of perfect wisdom, perfect love, perfect compassion, perfect power, and perfect skillful means because of entering the Mahayana through the door of bodhicitta, through that incredible mind that wishes to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings and engages in everything for others' sake, puts others' needs before their own because of the great kindness of all, and because of that vow that he or she has made, that we will make once we open that door to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And that vow that comes from that incredible renunciation, as Namgyal says in Mind Training Like the Rays of the Sun, is something that is day and night with us. And no matter, even when we're distracted, Shantideva says in the Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, we'll be accumulating incredible amounts of virtue well beyond anything we could ever imagine. So now when we read this Heart Sutra, remember that this Heart Sutra is talking about the emptiness of intrinsic existence, the emptiness of inherent existence, also, though, implicitly talking about the 5 Mahayana paths that begin with bodhicitta. And the point here is that those 5 Mahayana paths, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, the path of no more learning, are all paths that we have to engage in, or are all the ripening paths coupled that will be coupled with the liberating paths. But those paths are empty of inherent existence. They're empty in terms of the 3 spheres of action, agent, and object. We always have to remember in any virtue that we engage in, such as generosity, that we're empty, the generosity is empty, and the sentient being that we're being generous towards is empty of intrinsic existence. And we look at compassion, the 3 levels of compassion. We see the compassion for sentient beings suffering, the compassion for sentient beings that are impermanent, and the compassion for sentient beings that are empty of intrinsic existence, empty of objective existence. So with all of that in mind, and with this thought that we're reciting this, that we're leading all sentient beings in this recitation so that each and every single one of them can achieve fearlessness and bliss. We're doing this in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. And these beings that we're leading in this prayer may become Buddhas before us and become our reliable guides. We see the great kindness of all is even greater than we could even imagine. We usually think of it in terms of, all of the things that we have in our life, all of the good things that we have are in dependence upon other sentient beings. But we also recognize that all sentient beings have Buddha nature. All sentient beings are equally important. All sentient beings will become a Buddha, and other sentient beings, many sentient beings will become Buddhas before we do, and they will become our reliable guides, and we will depend upon them more than any other beings in the universe. Only the enlightened Buddhas are the ones who can show us the complete path. So keep all of this in mind and know that we're doing this for this one reason. We're here today on a Sunday morning for one reason: to become a Buddha for the sake of everyone. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination, and at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. Emptiness is no other than form, form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. Thus, Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas, no I dhatu up to no mind dhatu, no dhatu of dharmas, no mind consciousness dhatu, no ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death, no end of old age and death, no suffering, no origin of suffering, no cessation of suffering, no path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the Bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of the 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequaled mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Teyata om gate gate paragate parasangate bodhisoha. Thus, Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train in the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, good, good, O son of noble family, thus it is, O son of noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jubene jodambane nguje duju ngayi dudo jendru babu lama yibu jinzi nesongandro zola jadze lo agasamara de jandara samara be agasamara de jandara. Aga samara dejandara samara be ata on gate gate paragate parasangate bodhiso baba gonja zonji gaye dembe doji she ubodoji mebodoji shewadoji dagi baji medo beja danje sheden koriezo kere donja jeju shewada medon be jenda ndewada domba donjin bonzo zonjoji Daji de jan da de le jo. So as we said in the 6 preparations, the final number 6 is making supplications and mandala offering, and sometimes it's in the 7 limb prayer. done, and sometimes it's in the supplication section. So we're incorporating it here. I just wanted to mention that again, so that when we're looking at the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, we have perspective on this. So we're offering this perfect, beautiful universe, perfect practice, all this perfect, wonderful stuff in the form of a mandala offering, in this mudra of mandala offering. And just imagine we're offering it as a request for teaching, and also to but this teacher, whenever someone's teaching, goes all the way back to Buddha, hopefully, hopefully is holding the extensive deeds and profound view lineage, and some of the lineage of instructions and so forth, that in those great beings that have passed down all of these traditions in the merit field. Hopefully the teacher that you're learning from has some sort of lineage that's related to those Indian masters and so forth, that go all the way back to Buddha Shakyamuni. So make this mandala offering. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas high, wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, a shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Gani Radayami. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. I take refuge until I am enlightened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by teaching the Dharma, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And again, anyone who's new, if you're saying it, you say, by the merit I create by listening to the Dharma. Sanje Chodan Zoje Janan La Janjo Badu Dani Jazu Chi Dagi Chuje Jibe Zonan Chi Drola Benje Sanje Juba Sho Sanje Chodan Zoje Janan La Janjo Badu Dani Jazu Chi Dagi Chuje Jibe Zonan Chi Drola Benje Sanje Juba Sho Sanje Chodan Zoje Janan La Janjo Badu Dani Jazu Chi Dagi Jiji Jibe Zonanje Drola Benje Zanje Drubajo. May this teaching be heard and understood by all sentient beings in their individual languages. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you are attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there's no bodhicitta. If there's grasping, you do not have the view. Independent origination. There is no ceasing, no arising, no annihilation, no permanence, no coming, no going, no separateness, no sameness. I prostrate to the consummate Buddha, the supreme among all teachers, the one who taught this peace, which is free of elaborations. The one who transformed into reliable guide, motivated by altruism to benefit sentient beings, the teacher, Sugata, and protector to you, I make prostrations. That's from Dignaga's Pramana Samuchaya, and from Dharmakirti's Pramana Vartika Karika. The one who has eliminated the web of conceptualizations and is endowed with the divine bodies of the vast and profound, who eternally shines forever, forth forever, noble light rays. To you, the Buddha, I make prostrations. The essence of dependent origination mantra. First, we'll do the meaning. All phenomena arise from causes. The causes are taught by the Tathagata. The cessation of causes as well are taught by the great seer. Om e dharma e tu brahava e ton dejan data gato yavada dejan jaya niroda ivam vadi maharamana yeswa. Profound, peaceful, elaboration-free, clear light, and non-composite, such as the nectar-like Dharma I have discovered. Finding no one who can fathom this teaching, in silence I retire to the woods. We're so blessed that the Buddha decided not to stay retired in the woods. Every time I read that, I think to myself, wow, imagine if he just stayed and just, wow, we're so fortunate the Buddha, out of great compassion and out of having the causes and conditions there for beings to be able to hear this nectar like Dharma that the Buddha discovered, this clear light, this permanence, this permanent state of cessation. You know, as we say, samsara has no beginning and has an end, but nirvana has a beginning and no end. This state of cessation that would never end. You know, this absence of suffering that would always be there. This emptiness of the mind, which is permanent. The emptiness is permanent. The mind will never not be empty. Our mind, the Buddha's mind, always empty of inherent existence, always empty of intrinsic existence. And our mind has no beginning and our mind has no end. Our mind is impermanent because it has temporal moments, but our mind has no end. But the state of mind, in terms of emptiness of our mind, is permanent. There's always this absence, this non-affirming negative, this absence of inherent existence that our mind possesses. And it's important for us to understand when we look at what emptiness is. Emptiness is not, it's just not. It exists, but only from a subjective, conventional nature. It doesn't have things don't have objective existence. Our mind doesn't have objective intrinsic existence. And because our mind doesn't have this hard, fastened, intrinsic existence of negative, intrinsic existence, it can be transformed. It can transform into purity. It isn't good, it isn't bad. It is empty of inherent existence, and therefore it can be transformed into only good. And we can move, as the Buddha does, from bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss because of dependent origination. Because if our mind has only that which gives rise to bliss in it, then we go from temporal moments of bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss to bliss. And if we remove the afflictive obstructions, which are inferred if the obstructions to omniscience have been removed and we're in a state of bliss, then there's no longer anything that can cause us fear. So we go from fearlessness to fearlessness to fearlessness to fearlessness, because the causes for fear are no longer there. Even the arhats, the Hinayana foe destroyers and solitary realizers, go from cessation to cessation to cessation of suffering because they have removed the afflictive obstructions, but they haven't really achieved all of their own aims, let alone all sentient beings' aims, because they don't have that bliss that the Buddha has, because they have obstructions to omniscience, those subtle stains left over from the self-grasping ignorance. And the negative seeds of karma, the contaminated karmas and so forth, are now no longer can be activated, because that which gives rise to the activation is no longer there. So even the hearers and solitary realizers go from cessation to cessation to cessation to cessation. But what's wonderful is that we're following the Mahayana path, the great vehicle path. So we not only can we know how to get rid of suffering and its causes, we can get rid of what the bodhisattvas say. I don't want that either. We say we don't want the 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings. And the bodhisattva says, I don't want those either. But I also don't want the obstructions to omniscience, because they keep me from having bliss, and they keep me from being able to be the most reliable guide in the world. And when we think about those we care about, and we start to expand it out to, those that we may have a problem with, that we kind of erase out of, oh, those are our enemies. We take them and put them into the category of beings I'd equally help. And those strangers that we really kind of just disregard because we're not thinking about them, the bodhisattva brings them all into his or her mind state and says, I want to free all of them. I feel a connectedness. I feel a love and compassion for them just as much as I do to the dearest person in this life I have. And that's why we imagine all of these beings in these other realms. They're strangers, just like someone, in, I don't know, I'm in Connecticut, so someone in Tennessee, I don't know, we'll say, they're a stranger, but they're just like they're just as much a stranger for me as a hell being or hungry ghost. So we start to think along these lines. When we make our mind bigger, the lobster that's at the bottom of the ocean is a stranger right now for me, but that lobster at the bottom of the ocean and the person in Tennessee and that hell being, since beginningless time, I've had, so many different lives. And those beings have taken care of me when I was most vulnerable. And that's the meditation that we do with the 7-point cause and effect, where we start to realize that I would equally help all of these beings because I've had all of these relationships with them. And then I start to really pinpoint those relationships I've had where I was so vulnerable and they took care of me so much. So when we can expand this kind of mind out, and we can start to think bigger than our little world usually thinks, and our worlds have gotten a little bit bigger because of technology, right? We can see different people in the world, but imagine how small the world was, for beings when they were trying to grapple with this stuff before there was any technology. You had your village and you're trying to imagine hell, hungry ghost, animals, you can't even we can think of so many different animals because we have, the animal planet. we know there are, multicolored animals in a rainforest, whereas, hundreds of years ago, that would probably have seemed like a hell realm or a hungry ghost realm to someone whose mind wasn't able to see it as big as it actually is. So always keep that in mind when you're doing your meditations. Don't say, well, that just sounds like some medieval junk, or just some, kind of scare tactic. Remember that an omniscient being talked about this. And whenever you hear things in the Lam Rim, or you hear things that the Buddha said that seem kind of far out, that seem maybe, different than what you would normally think, we always have to think about, well, wait, maybe this could be exactly the way that it is. And maybe I just need to look at it in a different way, in a broader way. And we know that well before someone becomes a Buddha, they're able to see all of these different realms. They're not able to see every single sentient being. They don't have omniscience. I know, but they're able to see more and more and more. And that's what's going on as the bodhisattvas move closer to Buddhahood, as they're getting rid of the coarse afflictions after the dull bodhisattva, the path of seeing, gets rid of those coarse afflictions when he or she sees emptiness, and then has to start getting rid of the subtle afflictions. And then once he or she gets up to the pure grounds, the 8th, 9th, and 10th ground, they start to get rid of the imprints, even the stains, those subtle stains. As Rinpoche used to say, if you have a cloth and it's got a stain on it and it's dirty, you're going to need, to wash it, to get rid of it, and you can wash it out, but there's still subtle stains that are left in it. So washing it out, the main coarse stain, is kind of like getting rid of the afflictive obstructions, that the hearers or solitary realizers do. But in order to get rid of those subtle stains, the kind of imprints, the leftover things that maybe you'd need a blue light or something, or black light, something like that to see, is going to take like a special soap to get it completely clean. And the obstructions to omniscience, or the cognitive obscurations, are like that, in that we need the special soap of bodhicitta to wash it. It's coupled with that liberating path and the ripening path of renunciation. We need that special soap called bodhicitta, and that soap washes it more and more and more. And when that soap of bodhicitta is combined with the same liberating path in terms of the wisdom realizing emptiness, emptiness is emptiness. There's not forms of emptiness. You have to see all of emptiness in order to have, be liberated from cyclic existence. But in order to get rid of those subtle stains, those ones that are left over for the bodhisattva on those high grounds, 8th, 9th, and 10th ground, one needs that special soap combined with the liberating path. And through going through the 10 bodhisattva grounds, when you arrive on that first bodhisattva ground and there's no longer those kind of coarse afflictions, and then you're going through to the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th bodhisattva grounds and getting rid of, the small, medium, and great kind of subtle afflictions, then you have to work on those small, medium, and great, or, the various levels of the cognitive obscurations, the obstructions to omniscience. And it's so fortunate, we're so fortunate to have landed in a path that will work to do that. And we have every single vehicle presented to us, because we know we have to practice in terms of the realizations, the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity, which would be kind of in common, in common because they're shared with the hearers and solitary realizer vehicle. We have to generate in our mind a desire to get out of the lower realms, then a desire to get out of all of the realms, and generate the 3 highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom. The Vinaya basket, Sutra basket, and Abhidharma basket. We have to realize in order to get rid of cyclic existence altogether. And then when we combine that with this realization that we care about everyone so much that we don't want to leave anyone behind, and that we don't just want an individual liberation, we don't just want it for ourselves, we want it for everyone, because we've had such close relationships with everyone. Why wouldn't we? And in order to fulfill our needs and their needs, we have to do it in that manner. And then we can take those teachings that are called shared in common with the small and medium capacity into the great vehicle. And once you have that realization of the teaching shared in common with small and medium capacity, you should have renunciation, a desire to definitely emerge from cyclic existence. It's at the subtle level, the desire to definitely emerge from the self-grasping ignorance, which is what, goes boom, 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 like self-grasping ignorance to inappropriate mental activity, inappropriate attention, into the afflictions, into the contaminated karmas, and then into samsara. So we want to definitely emerge from that origin at that subtle level. That's the renunciation that we have. And if we combine that then with this idea that, these two small and teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity won't fulfill everything that I need, because I can't get to bliss. I can only get to fearlessness. And and they won't fulfill all sentient beings' needs because I can't be a reliable guide to anyone until I achieve the state of Buddhahood. When you combine those paths, liberating and ripening paths of the small and the medium scope is where the liberating path really starts. But it's fine. The teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity. When you combine those ripening and liberating paths found in those first two capacities with the mind that aspires to enlightenment, bodhicitta, then you have the wind behind your liberating path that blows you into to Buddhahood through the course of Teata Om Gate Gate Parakate Parasangati Bodhisoha, through generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment for a dull, regular bodhisattva at the path of accumulation. But the assumption is made at that path of accumulation that you have calm abiding. To get bodhicitta, you have to have calm abiding. You have to have shamatha. Something that, maybe you don't hear about as much, but you have to, it'd be very difficult, as Geshe Aga said, which means you have to have it. Like, I don't know, couple do. You have to have this mind, this kind of shamatha in order to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. Because then that when you get as a dull bodhisattva, when you generate this mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then you first have this aspiring bodhicitta, and then you take the bodhisattva vow and it turns into engaged bodhicitta. And once you have that engaged bodhicitta, it's said that you can't lose your bodhicitta from there. Once you're at that medium level, in terms of the dull bodhisattva of the path of accumulation, you no longer can lose your bodhicitta. We know once you get to the path of preparation, you have to have a union of calm abiding and special insight. So it's not like you're hurry up and getting shamatha. You have shamatha, you have calm abiding that allows you to, how could you be so focused that day and night you would think about becoming a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings? How could you be so focused that day and night you wanted transcendent you wanted to be liberated? As it says, that's what renunciation is. How could you have that day and night, if you didn't have a calm mind? So it's just important to look at all of these facets have to be in place. The building blocks for Buddhahood all have to be there. You can't leave some of them out, the ones you don't really like out. You have to be able to have all of these building blocks. And if you don't, when you get to that 7-point cause and effect instruction, you have to have the object of observation be all sentient beings. And obviously you don't know where and who all of them are at that point, but you have to have a broad enough mind in order to generate bodhicitta that sees that there's a lot more out there than we know about. When we talk about bugs even, I mean, think about how the millions, trillions of animals, if you're including bugs, there are. So we have to have this very, very broad mind that generates this mind that aspires to enlightenment. And then that calm mind then, gets united with the wisdom and is able to look at what the wisdom we have arisen from hearing, and then we've analyzed it. No, this is wisdom. This is the right thing. And then the meditation, once we have that single pointed concentration, once we have that calm abiding, we can really look at what this emptiness is. What is this non-affirming negative that says that nothing has inherent existence, nothing has objective existence? And it says that as you move through the path of preparation, through heat, peak, patience, and last state in where you're not a superior, not a noble one, that last state, you are refining your understanding of emptiness more and more and more, to the point where you almost feel like you're seeing it before you see it, because the duality of subject and object is really starting to not be there anymore for you as a practitioner. You've really got that focused mind, that shamatha, that's able to be combined with that wisdom, that vipassana, that special insight. And it's so calm, it's so refined, it's so clear and stable, that as it gets more and more and more refined, that duality becomes less and less apparent, to the point where you see the non-duality of subject and object directly. You have a direct, valid cognition at the path of seeing of that, and then you become, once you go through the uninterrupted path and the path of release, then once you go through that and you have the path of release and come out of this meditation, now you're a first ground bodhisattva, and the 10 bodhisattva grounds begin from there. So people say, oh, I'm a bodhisattva. Well, be sure you know what you're talking about. You may be, they're real bodhisattvas. Maybe, but make sure you're not, you could say that, like, because I call my dog Suma. Suma means protector, and Lama means goddess. She's a dog. She may be a goddess emanation, but looks like a dog in the animal realm, not a goddess in the gods realm. So make sure when we're talking with others and when we're thinking about this stuff, we really, really know what we're talking about, really know what we're thinking about when we say, oh, this is what a bodhisattva is. This is what a renunciate is. Make sure we're not just talking about a facsimile, which is great. Facsimiles are great. We take facsimile of bodhisattva vows before a tantric initiation. If we're not bodhisattvas, we know that in order to take a bodhisattva vow, you have to have a bodhisattva. You have to be a bodhisattva. You have to have aspiring bodhicitta in order to actually receive a bodhisattva vow in a non-contrived state, an actual receiving of it. When that finger gets snapped and the Lama snaps his or her finger, and then they say, now you have the bodhisattva vow. Yeah, kind of. If you're a bodhisattva already, yeah, you have the bodhisattva vow. But what we do as practitioners, what I do as a practitioner at my level is I act as if. It's almost like, the pre-tantra, where we're acting as if when we do deity yoga that we're the deity, so we can slowly, transform into that deity. We're not already the deity. We have the potential to be that deity because our mind is empty of inherent existence, because we have this clear light mind that at its most subtle level, if we look at clear light mind's subtle level, actually isn't grasping at phenomena as being this or that. There isn't a grasping present in it at that final, most subtle level that we can lasso with death and lasso at these various very, very difficult times to lasso. And in meditative concentration, we can lasso it if we're high realized beings. But just recognize that we are doing it in a contrived way, in a way that's like it, a facsimile kind of way, so that we condition our minds, we leave imprints in our minds to keep connecting with it and keep connecting with it and keep doing it and keep telling our minds and reinforcing in our minds, we want to have renunciation. We want to have bodhicitta. We want to have the correct view of emptiness. And eventually, this reinforcement, these imprints that we leave in our mind are so strong because they're connected with such holy realizations, they will eventually serve as kind of causes and conditions for the, we have, because of dependent origination, nothing comes from nowhere. Everything has some sort of arisal, or can be found through nominal designation. Comes into being through the power of nominal designation. We know that everything, all phenomena has this aspect, and our arisal of renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness will come into being through these causes and conditions that we're creating right now, through the dependent origination that's arising right now as we're engaging, and will arise into resultant states of renunciation, bodhicitta, and emptiness, and arise into the state of the actual deity when we're doing the method. When we look at Tantrayana, method and wisdom, the method is the deity yoga and the wisdom is the emptiness of the deity yoga, and this kind of union of method and wisdom. So when we do this meditation, it's important that we understand that if we're doing any kind of deity yoga, we're seeing the absence of action, agent, and object of the three spheres, because the real practice of deity yoga is this union of making it kind of one taste, one thing, the emptiness of the deity we're meditating on. And this becomes more and more subtle as you go through action, performance yoga, and highest yoga tantra, and how that process works becomes more and more subtle. But we will all have to realize that final completion stage. We will all have to realize somehow or another that pure mind at that most subtle level, in order for us. And if it's, we have to have bodhicitta, and renunciation that caused that bodhicitta, and have been purified and accumulated the right amount of merit, and those ripening paths combined with that wisdom, and then voila, not like voila, because it sounds like a long process to me. But sooner or later, one day we'll go from the 10th ground to voila, the 11th, resultant ground, or the 13th ground, or something like that in Tantrayana. I'm by no means any kind of a scholar when it comes to, some of those higher points. But let's talk about now Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. Wow, it's so cool. I've been thinking about Rinpoche a lot in terms of, because I've had to talk at the memorial, and thinking about just going over my life and with Rinpoche, and just wow, he was so clear that the Lam Rim was the key to our success. I remember he used to get done with the teaching in the earlier days, even later days, when we, after the teaching, would get into his room, and he would have that look, that blissful look, like that, Lama Tsongkhapa students look, like just grinning ear to ear. And he'd be so pleased, and he'd look at me and say, "We brought the Lam Rim Menda," and Menda is weapon or gun sometimes. And he'd say, "Wow, he'd go like this, we really brought the Lam Rim Menda today." Saying, and what is that weapon? It's the weapon against the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience. It's the only weapon in terms of what is being presented, because the entire path that Buddha taught is contained within the Lam Rim. So it's a weapon that serves to overthrow the enemy of our afflictions. And what are those afflictions? The afflictive obstructions. And then what do they leave? What kind of residue do they leave? The obstructions to omniscience. A great way to put it too, which Geshe Dorje Damdu talks about, is if somebody sticks garlic in your cup and you don't want garlic in your cup and you dump it out, it's like getting rid of the afflictive obstructions, those main things, the main afflictions, their seeds, the contaminated karmas, you're getting rid of it. But still, the mug stinks. There's still a residue, even though, the garlic, the coarse garlic's out of it. You can say there's no more garlic. There's an absence of garlic. There's not an absence of stain. There's not an absence of imprint, if you will, of that garlic. And the imprint of that garlic is like the obstructions to omniscience, that residue that's left over from the afflictive obstructions. So that's the weapon. The Lam Rim's the weapon to get rid of, the coarse garlic, dump the garlic out of the mug, and then the soap that washes the mug very, very thoroughly. And then you smell it and you're a Buddha. You smell it and there's no more garlic. So it's a very good way to think about it. And I'd heard it before from some other lamas about the garlic. I think even Rinpoche talked about the garlic, as a matter of fact, in the cup. Very, very common thing. But recently I heard it from Geshe Dorje Damdu, so I want to give him credit. And he says, don't ever give me credit if you're saying it wrong. He goes, don't say I said that. He said, he'll say, oh, last class you said this. I didn't say that. Don't say I said that. It's so easy to just tweak something just a little bit and misunderstand something. And it's important that we're careful with that. I was listening back to a teaching that I gave recently, and I said the teachings shared in common with beings of three capacities. No, it's the teaching shared in common with beings of small and medium capacity that are in common with the beings of great capacity. So it's just funny. You can easily just say something, when you're just moving in teachings, and every teacher does it, believe me. So I'm not saying, oh, but it's really important that we are careful. Because if someone only heard one teaching, and then that was it, you want to make sure that the one teaching that they heard is exactly accurate. So they don't go and say, oh, well, the teachings for being of great capacity are in common with the teachings of beings of small capacity. No. No. The teachings of beings of medium capacity are in common with small capacity. No. So it's these graded stages of the path, small, medium, and great. But in order to get to great, you have to have small and medium. And that's why we say in common. we say that the teachings of beings of small capacity are in common with the beings of the teachings of beings of medium capacity, because the beings of medium capacity need those teachings for beings of small capacity, and the teachings of small and medium capacity are in common with the teachings of beings of great capacity, because the being of great capacity needs the teachings of beings of small and medium capacity. So that was my little eraser of a few teachings ago. I only said it real quickly once. I said it right first, and then I, corrected myself to sound fancy, I think, and said in common. And I said it in a funny way that I was shocked that I said it like that. But anyway, I think everybody's okay. So we're talking about Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, the Lamrim Menda, as Rinpoche called it, that thing which will obliterate every single negativity. We can achieve the state of Buddhahood where they have only excellent qualities and have no negative qualities whatsoever, not even the imprints of negative qualities. There'll be nothing negative there. We'll have perfect wisdom, compassion, love, perfect skillful means and power, and be the most reliable guide in the universe. We'll be the one who transformed into a reliable guide. We'll be that being. We will transform the way that Buddha transformed. And we know that that was not a simple process, and that was a process that took a lot of cutting and rubbing from the Buddha's side. The Buddha didn't just, no matter if you look at the life story of the Buddha as an emanation, however you want to look at it. We in the Mahayana say Buddha was already a Buddha. Maitreya, who's the future Buddha, was a Buddha before Buddha Shakyamuni, which makes it even more confusing. But whatever way it happened, what the Buddhas do when they are just emanating is show us a show. They give us a movie. Here's the movie of how you have to become a Buddha. And here's the do's and don'ts. So the Buddha showed us the do's and don'ts in the movie of how one would go from, someone who wasn't a Buddha into a Buddha. And it takes a lot of cutting and rubbing. It takes a lot of saying, oh, these higher states of concentration that feel so good and are so blissful that we can achieve, these states of samadhi that you can achieve, even in the form and formless realms, the peak of cyclic existence, those incredible realizations are not nirvana, they are not liberation. And that cessation that you can achieve of a hero or solitary realizer is not the final thing that will fulfill all of your needs. So it takes a lot of effort and a lot of cutting and rubbing for us to get to that final view. And when we look at these great beings who've come before us, who have worked so hard to get at the final view, it's incredible. And just a thing I wanted to share with you that's kind of neat. So I love this identifying mother, this remembering mother, identifying mama. It's translated as Song of Experience. By Janja Rilpi Dorje. It's just such an incredible points that are made about emptiness in a real poetic way that just strikes me for some reason, right at my heart. But it's very interesting to see that Janja Rilpi Dorje was a student of I was just reading his bio, of the 7th Dalai Lama, who I now have this super fondness for. And his student, so 7th Dalai Lama was a teacher of Janja Rilpi Dorje. Janja Rilpi Dorje was recognized and had a student named Goncho Jimmy Wambo. Goncho Jimmy Wambo is a reincarnation of Jamyan Sheba, who Rinpoche said, Jamyan Sheba you're going to need if you want to understand emptiness. Okay, so Goncho Jimmy Wambo wrote the text on tenets that I'm studying at the Tibet House right now. So you see that the 7th Dalai Lama taught Janja Rilpi Dorje, and Janja Rilpi Dorje taught Goncho Jimmy Wampo, and recognized Goncho Jimmy Wampo as the reincarnation of Jamyan Sheba. So we're in some good company. Our family lineage, our lineage of teachers and teachings is pretty amazing. And Janja Rilpi Dorje also wrote an incredible text on the tenet systems, and wrote, I think, a commentary on in praise of dependent origination. I think, don't quote me 100%. You can give me like 90 on that. But I believe he wrote a commentary on Lama Tsongkhapa's text as well, which I haven't seen, but I think I saw that in the bio I read yesterday. I was, going through and reading Janja Rilpi Dorje's Remembering Mama. Because of Jeffrey Hopkins' kindness, we have the commentary by Goncho Jimmy Wombo on that text. It's so clear. And if you read Goncho Jimmy Wombo's tenet systems text and you plug what he says about tenet systems into Remembering Mama and into Goncho Jimmy Wombo's commentary on Remembering Mama, you see all the negations that he's making in there about the Eastern masters, the three Eastern masters. He's negating the Madhyamika Svatantrika view, and then he's negating the Chittamantran view, and he's negating the Vabhashika and Sautrantika view. So in order for us to truly read this material, we have to know what those tenet systems are, because it's so easy to mix it up if we don't, and think, oh, this is what they're talking about, and kind of go off in the car of ignorance and be like, and with a false sense of confidence. And when I was reading that yesterday, man, wow. When I saw Goncho Jimmy Wombo's comments on the section where he starts getting into his kind of nastiness, like, and ends it with, not really sure what you're pointing at. He says, like, if you are, talking about the same thing, this non-affirming negative, this lack of inherent existence, lack of intrinsic existence, yay. But if you're not, I don't know really what are you pointing at exactly? And have you, when we look at, Mama in this text that we're talking about is the emptiness, have you kicked your mother out? Have you missed it? Have you in some way landed in an extreme? Are you in an extreme of permanence or annihilation? How are you landing there? Because every school in the tenet systems, the Vabhashika school, the 18 of those, the Sautrantika school, the couple of those, the mind-only school, depending on how you look at it, whether it's following reason or scripture, or true aspectarian or false aspectarians, or pluralists, non-pluralists, or half aegis, split aegis, all of those. And we get to the middle way school, the Madhyamika school. You have the Madhyamika Prasangika and Svatantrika. And Svatantrika has one that's kind of like Sautrantika, middle way, the Madhyamika Svatantrika that's kind of like Sautrantika, and Madhyamika Svatantra that kind of like the mind-only school. All of those incredible tenet systems that you hear about us, and written about by Basu Bandhu and Dharmakirti and Dignaga and Haribhadra and Baba Vega, Chandrashita, all of these names that you hear about, they're tenets that they have on paper. I didn't say a Sangha because a Sangha has a text written in the Prasangika view, I believe. So I didn't say a Sangha. He mostly wrote on mind-only view, but he has one text on the Sublime Continuum where he writes a commentary on Maitreya's text, which isn't that. But Kamala Shila, we see these masters fall into the category of below Prasangika view. So these holy, holy beings who give us this staircase to the correct view of emptiness, they fell to an extreme. It's only by looking at Nagarjuna's final thesis, which is not a thesis apparently, or Chandrakirti's or Aryadeva's or Shantideva's final point that things lack complete objective existence. There's no kind of established, characteristics from the object side whatsoever. It's all subjective. There's externality, but the way it comes into being is merely causes, conditions, and collections that serve a suitable basis to be nominally designated as this or that. So it's important that we are able to, start to distinguish between what these things are and are not, so that we end at the real middle way. Because the middle ground, the middle way, is the only thing which will allow us to achieve a liberating path. And every one of the tenets say they have the middle way. Well, we have the middle way because of this. We have the middle way because of that. And it's only the Prasangika middle way. It's only the middle way consequence school held by those holy, holy great masters. The realization that Milarepa had about the emptiness of the mind that will allow us to, get on board and head to an abiding nirvana or a non-abiding nirvana of Buddhahood. As we're looking at, the ripening paths, and we're looking at the advices that Buddha gave, realize that the Buddha said this. The Buddha said, for common people, I give you advice. For yogis, I give you tenets. And it's the tenets that will allow you to be liberated. It doesn't just mean yogi, in the way we would think. Yogi is someone who wants to get out of cyclic existence altogether. And the only way to get out of cyclic existence altogether is to have a correct view. And if, as Sachin Kunganipo says, if there is grasping, you do not have the view. If you have a grasping at an extreme of permanence or annihilation, I think I said something funny in another teaching. I said externality, because I was studying so much mind-only school. Mind only negates externality altogether. They say everything's just the nature of the mind. It's all in here. There's none of it's out there. And it gets you set up for subjectivity. You see how it sets you up for that. But the real extremes are permanence and annihilations. Chitta tata. These are the two extremes that we have to not have. And we can't even have a little bit of either one of them if we want to achieve, again, an abiding nirvana of a hero, solitary realizer, or complete Buddhahood. So there's a lot of misunderstanding that says, oh, just through selflessness of person, I can achieve nirvana. No. The Buddha said that just to, start you off, but no, that's not true. You have to realize the selfless of person and selfless of phenomena. Aryadeva makes it so clear. And even the Dalai Lama says that, to really realize emptiness, to see emptiness directly, how could you, really see the selflessness of person without knowing that the hand itself is empty, of inherent existence? Because it says in the Illuminating the Intent, the Umagombo Rapsel by Lama Tsongkhapa, that we have this kind of idea of phenomena, and then we say, oh, here I am. And then we grasp at mine. We have and then from this, I am truly established. I am inherently existent. Then I am the most important person in the universe. And we have this self-cherishing attitude, which gives us so much problem over and over and over again. Okay, so the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We have the 4 opening categories, the greatness of the author. We know is Atisha, but then all of the integrated paths that Atisha taught, and all of the lineages of extensive deeds, profound view lineage, and the lineage of blessings. All of those lineages, from Shakyamuni, and Shakyamuni appearing as Vajradhara, and who taught all the tantras and so forth. So Lord Atisha combined all of those things. So the greatness of the teacher is Lord Atisha, because it says that the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment is a commentary on the lamp for the path to enlightenment by Lord Atisha. But also it says, it's also on the Abhisama Alamkara. And then, of course, we see all of the lineages that Lama Tsongkhapa pays homage to. So it's really a textbook that combines all of that. And the author is all of those authors that Atisha combined in order to write the lamp for the path to enlightenment. And the greatness of the teaching, allowing us to see that no teachings are contradictory. Everything's an instruction to practice. That's what the point of all this information is. It's not just information so that you can, talk a million miles an hour like I am right now about the Lam Rim. It's so that you have all of that information to know what to do when you need that information in terms of practice. Because there's nothing the Buddha said that wasn't for a being to practice. There was some nugget in there that he was giving that was an instruction that was going to be practiced, and each being was getting what they needed to practice from the Buddha. And then it allowed us to understand the conqueror's intent, and then abandon that awful thing, which is abandoning the Dharma and seeing, oh, this isn't a good teaching, or that's a better teaching, not understanding that this is all great teaching, because this is all a means to get to Buddhahood, either pointing at the mountain, bringing you to the base of the mountain, or bringing you to the top of the mountain. It's all getting you to that top of the mountain. And you would need someone to point you and say, the mountain's over there. If you're standing like 100 miles away, and you would need someone to say, okay, let's get you to the base of that mountain, or the base camp of Everest. But you're not at the top of Mount Everest yet. And then you'd need a guide to bring you to the top of Mount Everest. But if you couldn't stand back and say, that's Mount Everest over there, and identify it to be able to start moving towards it, then you would never get to Mount Everest. So the Buddha's teachings are like that. They're all a means to get to the top of Mount Everest, or in terms of metaphor. I always get that confused. Get to the top of, I'm sure there's teachers here who know this for sure, English majors I see on. So I'm sorry, I'm destroying the English language, but get you to the top of Mount Everest, to complete Buddhahood, to that place where you have fearlessness and infinite happiness or bliss. So everything the Buddha taught was for that. And this Lamrim teaching shows us that. And it shows us how to listen to these teachings right, how to teach the teachings right, and then how students are led in the actual instructions, beginning with relying on a teacher. And then, as Pabunka says in the commentary on the foundation of all good qualities, which is basically a summary of the Lamrim Chemo and the Ngarim Chemo, the great treatise on the stages of the path to enlightenment, and the great treatise on the stage of the tantric path to enlightenment. It starts with the teacher, and then what do you do once you have a teacher? And then we get into, in the Lamrim Chemo, the life of leisure and opportunity, and death and impermanence, and the reflecting on the lower realms, and then refuge, and so forth, and karma, and so forth. So now we're in the section on karma, and we just went over the 10 non-virtues. We completed the 10 non-virtues, which then have their corresponding 10 virtues. So the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtues are the 10 virtues. So the ethics which abandons killing is the virtue of abandoning killing. The non-virtue that engages in killing is the non-virtue of killing. So we see their opposites being the virtue, like they're engaged opposites, not just kind of like, oh, I didn't do it. I just did, mindlessly didn't do it. It's an engaged act of abstaining from killing. So we know that the 10 non-virtues are 3 non-virtues of the body: killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct; 4 non-virtues of the speech: lying, divisive speech, harsh words, and gossip. And we know there's 3 non-virtues of the mind: covetousness, harmful intent, and wrong view. And then there's extremely kind of detailed points that are made in the Lamrim Chemo next that get into, well, what is the basis? What makes this more powerful, this non-virtue more powerful than another non-virtue? And what do these non-virtues do? How do these things create results? What are the results they kind of create environmentally, behaviorally, fruitionally? How do they produce the results of throwing karma and completing karma that bring about our whole existence? So we're not going to get into all of those details, but I encourage you to read it over and over and over again in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, because you'll really find a lot of details in there that will support your reasoning to abandon non-virtue and engage in virtue, because from non-virtue comes from virtue comes happiness, and from non-virtue comes suffering. And when you really get a handle on what that means in a small way and in a great way, it will make you day and night want to abandon non-virtue and engage in virtue. So what happens then if you engage in non-virtue? Do you just say, oh, darn, better luck next time? Or is there something you can do about it? So the next chapter gets into applying the 4 opponent powers. And this is something that's an important thing to talk about because it's a way that we can counteract negativity. And it's a way that we can tell our minds that we don't want negativity, and kind of put a kind of stamp, put like what is it called? A seal in our mind that seals in this virtue that says, I want to engage in virtue. Let me make sure that that's what my mind's holding on to. I don't want to engage in non-virtue. Why don't I want to engage in non-virtue? Because it causes suffering. What kind of suffering does it create? Fruitional results, environmental results, behavioral results, throwing karma, completing karma, all the suffering of the lower realms, all the suffering in the higher realms. All of these are created by these various karmas that we engage in. And depending on the varying degrees of karmas, even virtues that are embedded with ignorance cause samsara. So we have to understand that, and don't think that just because we're doing a good job in life, we won't have any more samsara. We have to do a good job in life with understanding that the good job we're doing in life is empty of action, agent, and object. That we're empty, the good job we're doing and in whatever good job we're doing, whatever it is in relation to the object, that's empty of inherent existence, because it's that ignorance, that's that that's that sitting there at all times that we're grasping at, the self-grasping ignorance that's there, that is causing us to be born again and again and again in samsara. And just virtue alone won't allow us to not have to have a kind of the throwing karma that throws us into a set of contaminated aggregates. We have to have virtue coupled with a liberating path. When we apply these four opponent powers, it's also important for us to think about the emptiness of action, agent, and object. So that's enough about emptiness in relation to this. Let's just talk about the kind of main levels of the opponent powers. I'm not going to get into huge details, but let's just talk about kind of the main points. So in the Lamrim Chemo, it's a little bit of a switched way of order than the way that I'm going to present it, because I've heard oral tradition points made about it that I find compelling, about switching the order up a little bit, and I'll tell you what I mean. The power of basis is going for refuge and generating bodhicitta. In the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, we find that put at number 4. But I've heard a lot in the oral tradition about putting it in the first, because when you are going to acknowledge your downfall, when you're going to engage in the limb of confession, so we did the 7-limb prayer in the beginning of the teaching, and the 3rd limb after offering is the limb of confession, acknowledgement of our downfalls. So I've heard that, when we do non-virtue, we do it in relation to the 3 jewels and to sentient beings. So this is one reasoning behind it. So when we engage in non-virtue, those are the objects we do it in relation to. Maybe we disparage the Lama. Maybe we don't keep our books where they should be in the cleanest place. Maybe we step over some Dharma. Maybe we say that golden Buddha is a lot better than that wooden Buddha. And then all of the things that we do in relation to other sentient beings that are non-virtuous. So the things that we do are usually in relation to not heeding advices, so many things. And also when we acknowledge our downfalls, it's nice to have witnesses. So when we go for refuge and we generate the mind of bodhicitta, we can imagine that all the gurus, Buddhas, and bodhisattvas are present in the space in front of us. So we keep going back to these themes. We use all of these tools that we're being taught in order to apply them to various other things. So you can do it really quickly. If you've engaged in a non-virtue, you can imagine, oh, there's the merit field. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Through the merit I create by practicing giving and the other perfections, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. And we see that one prayer combines refuge and bodhicitta. So that's the power of basis. That's the reasoning behind putting it first, is that you have witnesses to your acknowledgement of downfalls, not witnesses that are judging, just witnesses that are seeing, oh, he's acknowledging there's a problem with this. And now we're creating connectivity to be helped with those things that we have a problem with. Because it's through causes and conditions that the Buddhas can emanate to help us. And if we're a ripe vessel, if we're a vessel that can be helped because we have causes and conditions from our side, an emanation will help us. So if we're imagining them and we're acknowledging it, not that the Buddhas aren't omniscient, but it's just another step for us to solidify our connection to the merit field and solidify that we know you are reliable guides. I'm acknowledging this to you because I clearly have a problem with this. And I've done this in relation to you, and I've done things to other sentient beings, and I clearly have a problem with this. So please help my mind. Please help me from, like it says in the commentary on the Source of All My Good by Papunka Rinpoche, from until now, I've really screwed this up. And I want to, from this point forward, bless me, help me to be able to not screw this up anymore. So we start with that. We start with setting it up and going for refuge. Then we say, okay, here it is. I regret having done this. I regret this. I regret that. Because we're sealing in our mind that we don't want to do these things anymore. It's not a judgment. Nobody's judging it. There's only love and compassion. There's no judgment. We have to take that out. We're judging ourselves in terms of what we've done, but only because we know it's going to keep us from fearlessness and bliss. So it's not like it's a kind of a different, it's not guilt. It's more of a regret because we're keeping ourselves from fearlessness and bliss. Normally we'd feel guilty when we're younger because of not that. This is the feeling regret because we've done something that's going to keep us from our full potential. This is the reasoning behind it. So we say what we regret, and then we can say, all the things I've done you can think of, maybe you just did something really horrible and you want to just nip it in the bud. And you can say this and everything else that I remember and don't remember. If it's something quick, you're just trying to apply an opponent, whenever a disturbing emotion arises in my mind, whenever an emotion arises, disturbing emotion arises in my mind that could hurt myself or others, firmly face and avert it, something like that in Geshe Langri Tamba's 8 verses. So we're doing that with this. We're firmly facing and averting it by sealing our mind with, this isn't something I want. So this is the power of regret. The next is the power of applying an antidote. So we know that there's 6 kind of points that are made in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. We can apply, different types of antidotes. We can, recite the Buddha's names, rely on meditation on emptiness. We can recite the Vajrasattva mantra. We can build stupas. We can, make holy images. There's so many different things we can do, and we can go back to the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment and look at those 6 exactly. I won't get into the details on that because we're running out of time, but we can find those 6 in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. So relying upon the practices and the names and so forth, doing deity yoga, whatever we can do as an opponent right then and there that says, I'm doing this practice right now in order to have an opponent. I'm reciting this Vajrasattva mantra right now. Om benzo sato samaya manupalaya benzo sato sveno pachisha didameva sutukayameva supukayameva anuraktameva sarvasiddhi me paracha sarvakama suchame kitam shriyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan sarva tathagata benzamo me monka benzo bhava maha samaya sapa ahom fe. So I'm applying something like that to this directly, just as an opponent, to kind of smash this non-virtue that I've engaged in. And then the final of the 4 is the power of commitment. We're making a realistic commitment in relation to this type of non-virtue, this specific thing that we've done, making realistic. If there's 10 things we've done, let's make 10 realistic commitments, because maybe they have things that we're more habituated with. We know that one of the karmas that we get as a carryover rather, from our previous lives is habituation, where why do I keep doing this over and over again? Well, because you did it over and over again before. Because your mind has these seeds in it of habituation. So some things that we do and we're like, man, I can't believe I did that. And other things we do, we say, I really can believe I did that because I do it all the time. There I go again. And, when we look at the non-virtues of our speech, boy, oh boy, when we look at divisiveness and really are honest about it, divisive speech, we look at gossip and we're really honest about it, and harsh words, and we're really honest about it. Yeah, we do that a lot, and it's easy to do that. And it can be easy for us to trick ourselves while we're doing it into thinking that, oh, we're doing this for good reasons. Oh, we're doing this for clarity. We have to be able to talk also. This is conventional reality. We have to be able to explain. And in the Bodhisattva commentaries, it says, if there's this bad thing that's not true, you need to clarify it. If it's about yourself, you don't, and if you're a bodhisattva, you don't want people to think bodhisattvas are just doing this thing. You should clarify it, but not be so clarifying it because you have pride. It's different. So that's tricky. Very gray this becomes. And this is why we circle in samsara, because we don't always know the right thing to do. So we're really trying our best to do the right thing with this practice. We're not going to get it perfect. to err is human. I mean, there's like bumper stickers about it. To err, and it's somebody said it. I don't know who. Somebody on the screen definitely knows who said that. But I mean, we're human beings. We're going to make mistakes. We have the karma rare and ready in the afflictions to do that. We have afflictions driving us, and the self-grasping ignorance is driving our car. Self-cherishing attitude is driving our car, but we don't want it to. And the only way to stop that driver is to start stopping the driver. Start. It's not like tomorrow morning that driver is going to get kicked out of the seat, and pure wisdom is going to take over, little tiny bits at a time. So we make commitments and say, okay, I did something really outlandish. I can probably say, I won't do that again for however long. But then when it's something that we probably will do again, we don't want to. In this confession, we really are telling our mind we don't want to do this again. But the commitment's like a vow in a sense. So when you tell your mind, okay, I'm never going to do this again, and you do it again, you just made it worse for your karma. So say I won't do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, and then hold and don't. Try really hard and be mindful. Your mindfulness is not forgetting the object. Okay, I just said I made a vow. My mindfulness is going to remember I made a vow not to do something that I do all the time for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 day, 2 days, 1 week, 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, etc. I'm going to really, really not do that. I don't know. I keep hearing the Lamas say that, but I'm like, okay, 6 months is up. Like mark my calendar. I can, if I do it again, it won't be as bad. But you get the point of it, right? You get the point of it, where you really, really are trying your best to be a good practitioner. That's what this is all about. My battery's dying. That's all right. This is what it's all about. We're trying our best to be the practitioner that the Buddhas have told us we have to be to get rid of fear and to have bliss. We're doing it for that. It's out of kindness to ourselves, being good to ourselves, that we're trying to stop ourselves. It's not because of, there's some holy being who's mad. It's because we want to be kind to ourselves. So by stopping these non-virtues, we can have happiness. We can have high status, certain goodness of liberation, which is an abiding nirvana, and certain goodness of complete enlightenment, which is Buddhahood. It's for that reason. So it's important to look at it like that. So those are the 4 opponent powers, and we apply them as quickly as we can, because we know that a non-virtuous seed, one of the points about karma is that it magnifies. It's certain, one, that non-virtue will produce suffering, and virtue will produce happiness. And a little virtue creates a big happiness, and a little non-virtue creates a big suffering. That magnification, as it festers, it magnifies. It's like they say like the seed of an oak tree. It's just a little seed, but it makes an oak tree. So it's important that we just head this thing off at the pass when we can, and don't let it carry into 10 lifetimes later, even though it's still lingering there. We don't have a liberating path. We haven't, cut it. We haven't gotten rid of, like the Buddha has gotten rid of everything, because of the getting rid of the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience. But we're really put some major brakes on when we apply this with wholehearted resolve. So that's enough for today. I just again want to say, please, in your dedication prayers, keep Liz Landaverde in your prayers. A very good friend of mine, a Dharma brother, a Dharma little brother, who I've just recently become very close with. His wife is, his name's Justin, and his wife is Liz Landaverde. And she was just diagnosed preliminary with a popcorn lung, and said that she will probably not live more than a year. And they have a small child, 3 or 4 years old. And yeah, just both very beautiful people, very loving, compassionate people, raising that little boy in a way that is the way you would want to see a little boy raised. And now that little boy may lose his mother, but through our prayers, may she live very, very long, and may the diagnosis be screwed up, or may there be a medicine that will fix it. And if there isn't medicine for it, may there one be made by, the great scientists before it's too late. So if we could dedicate that, and also think about all beings that are suffering. I know every one of you have beings in your life. You've all contacted me and said, at some point in time or another, we know beings that, are suffering, that, just have horrendous, difficult circumstances. And let's just remember all of them and keep everyone in our prayers, and keep me in your prayers, and keep Lori in your prayers, please. And everyone, I don't want to put anyone out there, so just say this. And yeah, if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you're attached to samsara, you have no renunciation. If you're attached to your own self-interest, there's no bodhicitta. If there is grasping, you do not have the view. So we see, if you're attached to your own self-interest at all, you don't have bodhicitta. That's why those steps to bodhicitta, part of it is the actual exchange, where you put others' needs before your own. When we look at the exchanging self with others practice. So if there's anything left in there that isn't doing that, if you aren't seeing that, I will, to fulfill my needs, put others before myself. And by doing that, I will become a Buddha and be able to fulfill not only my needs, but their needs. So may we all quickly become Buddhas, and maybe, we can be a Buddha doctor emanating. Brian Celius said something so wonderful one time. He became a doctor, and he said that he started taking care of Rinpoche, and he started giving Rinpoche his medicine for free. And he said that he felt like when that started happening, the whole reason he became a doctor was to be able to take care of Rinpoche. May we have more beings in this world like that. Okay. We'll do the concluding prayers and read Rinpoche's prayer. Rinpoche's prayer I titled "The Complex Yogi Poses as a Simple Monk." I may change it to "Buddha Poses as a Simple Monk." I'm not sure. Or "The Buddha Poses as a Simple Monk." I like the complex yogi, but I don't know if it's clear enough. It maybe seems far out there. I'm not sure yet, but I'm thinking about it. But it may stay just as it is. But I just putting it out there if anybody has 2 cents. That's my 2 cents. I didn't know if maybe I was trying to be too cool for the room with the title. Okay. Thanksgiving mandala offering. Concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I've collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Ozandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. And just as an aside, the reason I came up with this complex yogi is Geshe Dorje Damdu was teaching one day, and he says, just because someone says they're a yogi, doesn't mean like that, doesn't mean anything. They say this person's a yogi, and they say, oh, I'm just a simple yogi. He said, what is a simple yogi? This is someone who understands the tenets and understands the correct view of emptiness and has bodhi, how could that be? So I then wrote a complex yogi. So that's where that came from. Everything has a reason. Any mistakes I've made in this teaching, which can happen as I see in watching back some teachings, you can say things that aren't exactly the way you wanted to say them. Hopefully there hasn't been anything too far off. I doubt it, but just little nuances of detail that could be wrong. Anything that I've made a mistake in, I confess right now, I regret having done it. And it be erased from your mind. So we can imagine the whole merit field, and we can imagine Vajrasattva there. And as an antidote, as we talked about, to that, we can imagine that white light rays and nectars are coming from Vajrasattva, who's inseparable from Kensar Geshe Wandak, as all the deities are, and transforming into white ohms and going into our crowns and purifying our body. Red light rays and nectars transforming into red ahs, going into our throats and purifying our speech. And blue light rays and nectars coming from Vajrasattva, who's inseparable from Kensar Geshe Wandak, and all the holy lamas, whoever you consider your root lama, transforming into blue homes and going into our hearts and transforming our minds into pure minds. So let's imagine that as we do the Vajrasattva mantra. Om benza satta samaya manupalaya benza satta sino bajita dida me bava sutokaya me bava subakaya me bava anurakta me bava savasiti me paracha savakama sutra me kitam shriyam kuruhum ha 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 ho bhagavan savatata kata benza mame moka benza bava maha samaya sapa ahom fe. May Lama Tsongkhapa's teachings please remain in this world. Mi me zewe derchen genrezi, jeme jembe wambo jambe on, dipo male junzi sawe da, ganchen gebe zochen Tsongkhapa, lozandra bishala zoade. May Paul and Lama protect us in all of our lives, protect the Dharma, as she has vowed to do. In the Kensar Geshe Wandak said Paul and Lama is our protector deity. Jo Rama, Jo Rama, Jo Rama, Junja Galara, Jamo Rama, Chadacha Tunjo, Rulo. Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Long Jong Jorama 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 Junja Galar Jamama Jadajun Jorul Hong Jo Hong. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri, and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. Ganri Rawe Gorwe Jinyandi Vendande Wa Malu Jongwene Chenrezi Wanden Zen Jatso Yi Jabezi De Badu De Yori. And then Rinpoche's prayer to please come back, please always be with us. May I never be separated from my root Lama, Kensar Geshe Wandak. May he always be there. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensar Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music, purified by Om Ah Hum. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you, who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha, who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidated the teachings for beings of 3 capacities. Now the sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. the sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May you swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you so much, everyone. I appreciate all of you. I hope that when we look at the sound stopping, we think of it in many ways. His teachings are continuing, as he's asked me to, through my sound. And hopefully it sounds like his sound, so that we can, kind of still feel so connected to those holy words that he taught. And that's my main objective, is to keep connecting all of you to Rinpoche's holy words, because it's only those words that can help us. Thank you so much. I appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time. Thank you for allowing me to teach.